Welcome to Global Watch. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The United States Supreme Court has delivered a landmark decision, striking down President Trump's sweeping tariffs. This ruling instantly sent shockwaves through global markets and diplomatic circles. More than a trade policy dispute, it's a defining moment for presidential authority. For years, these tariffs reshaped supply chains and strained alliances, symbolizing a go-it-alone American approach. Now, the court has dismantled that symbol, fundamentally altering the balance of power in Washington. The decision challenges the president's broad use of national security as a justification for economic protectionism, forcing a confrontation with Congress over who truly controls trade. The ruling arrives as the Supreme Court itself faces intense scrutiny, especially from those wary of its conservative majority. By constraining a Republican president, the court's legal reasoning and political motives will be dissected for years. For the global economy, this could signal a return to a more predictable, rules-based order. International partners, long frustrated by Trump's tariffs, may now see an opening for renewed negotiations, but the path forward is uncertain. Industries that benefited from protectionism face new challenges, while those harmed won't recover overnight. Politically, a defiant president is unlikely to accept the court's decision quietly. This is not the end of the conflict, but the start of a new, more complex phase. At its core, this is about executive power. Trump's tariffs were a key tool in testing the limits of his authority. The Supreme Court's intervention is a major check, drawing a line the executive cannot cross without Congress. As the world processes this historic decision, one thing is clear. The balance of power in American government has shifted. The future of U.S. trade policy and the presidency itself hangs in the balance. The court has spoken, and its words will echo for years. The global community is watching closely. The next moves in Washington will shape the world's economic future. The road to the Supreme Court began in Trump's first term, when he used Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum, even targeting close allies. This shattered decades of trade consensus and ignited a global trade war. Upon returning to office, Trump doubled down, expanding tariffs and making them central to his America First agenda. The administration's legal justification, economic competition, equals a national security threat. Businesses, industry groups, and foreign governments quickly challenged this broad interpretation, arguing the law was never meant for sweeping protectionism. Lower courts issued conflicting rulings, creating uncertainty for businesses and the global economy. The Supreme Court's intervention became necessary to resolve these fundamental constitutional questions. The legal battle unfolded as the judiciary increasingly scrutinized executive power. Previously, the court allowed controversial policies to remain in effect while challenges played out. This time, the justices granted a full hearing, signaling a readiness to confront the issue head-on. The stage was set for a definitive ruling on the boundaries of presidential power. The stakes, not just trade, but the very structure of American governance. The outcome would reverberate far beyond the courtroom. The Supreme Court faced a deceptively simple question. Does Section 232 give the president near unlimited power to impose tariffs in the name of national security? Trump's team argued yes, claiming broad discretion to define threats and act swiftly. They linked economic vulnerabilities directly to national security. Challengers countered that Congress never intended Section 232 as a blank check for protectionism. They argued the law was for genuine emergencies, not everyday economic competition. Allowing the president to declare any import a security threat, they said, would cede Congress's constitutional authority over trade. The court sided with the challengers, finding the administration's interpretation overly broad and untethered from the law's original intent. The majority ruled that if Congress meant to delegate such sweeping power, it would have done so explicitly. Economic competition alone, the court said, does not equal a national security threat under this law. The decision reaffirmed that regulating foreign commerce is Congress's job. Future attempts to use national security as a pretext for broad economic policy will face a high legal barrier. The president cannot unilaterally rewrite trade laws without Congress. The Supreme Court's decision sent immediate tremors through the U.S. and global economies. On Wall Street, companies reliant on imports saw stock prices surge, while protected domestic industries faced uncertainty. The ruling promises a realignment of global supply chains. Businesses must now decide whether to revert to old suppliers or stick with new ones. For consumers, the decision could mean lower prices, but relief won't be instant. Some companies may pocket savings rather than pass them on. Internationally, trading partners have signaled willingness to lift retaliatory tariffs, opening the door for renewed negotiations. The world hopes for a return to a more cooperative trade environment. Yet political uncertainty from the White House looms large. The president's response could shape the next phase of global trade. The economic reset is underway, but the transition will be bumpy. The ruling's impact will unfold over months and years. All eyes are on Washington. The stakes for the global economy have never been higher. The political fallout is as significant as the economic impact. The ruling is a direct rebuke of President Trump's assertive use of executive power. By striking down the tariffs, the court challenges the president's entire theory of unilateral action. Congress now faces a critical test. Will it reclaim its constitutional role in trade, or remain gridlocked? The decision hands power back to lawmakers, but it's up to them to act. For Trump, having his signature policy dismantled by a court he helped shape is a political blow. His response, whether to attack the judiciary or seek compromise, will define the next chapter. This is a major test for America's system of checks and balances. The ruling reaffirms the president is not above the law. The long-term impact depends on how Congress, the president, and the public respond. The struggle to define presidential limits continues. The major questions doctrine was central to the court's decision. This principle says that on issues of vast significance, the executive needs clear authorization from Congress. The court has used this doctrine to strike down major policies from both parties. Critics watch to see if the justices would apply it consistently to a Republican president. By striking down Trump's tariffs, the court showed even-handedness. The majority ruled that reshaping the economy through tariffs is a major question requiring explicit congressional approval. This signals a broader judicial philosophy, reigning in executive power, regardless of party. Some legal scholars argue the doctrine itself is controversial, giving judges too much power. Still, the debate over its legitimacy and scope is far from over. The court's approach will shape future battles over executive authority. Legal experts agree. This is a landmark moment for the separation of powers. The decision draws a clear line. Presidential authority in trade is not absolute. The court's opinion, grounded in statutory interpretation and the major questions doctrine, is seen as careful legal craftsmanship. By applying the doctrine to both Democratic and Republican administrations, the court aims to reinforce its legitimacy. Some scholars see a principled shift to limit executive power. Others suspect a strategic move to appear impartial. The broader context matters. The court faces more cases on presidential authority this term. The tariff ruling may be just the beginning of a series of decisions redefining executive power. Experts are watching to see if these principles will be applied consistently. The constitutional tug-of-war is far from over. The boundaries of presidential power are being redrawn in real time. The ruling lands in a deeply polarized America where trust in institutions is low. Many view the Supreme Court through a partisan lens, doubting its independence. By striking down Trump's tariffs, the court challenges the narrative that it avoids confronting the president. Public reaction will be divided. Opponents see a triumph for the rule of law. Supporters see betrayal. The president's response will heavily influence perceptions, potentially deepening polarization. The court's conservative majority, once celebrated by the right, could now face backlash. The decision puts the court's legitimacy in the spotlight. Can it regain trust as a neutral arbiter, or will every ruling be seen as partisan? The answer will shape the nation's political health. The stakes for public trust in the judiciary have never been higher. The court's gamble for legitimacy is underway. The nation watches, divided. With the court's decision, the U.S. stands at a crossroads. Congress now holds the power to set trade policy, but deep divisions make action unlikely. Without a clear strategy, businesses and global partners face uncertainty. The president's next move could provoke a constitutional crisis or open the door to compromise. The responsibility for navigating this new landscape extends beyond Washington. The American public must engage in the debate over trade and government power. This ruling is a call to action, not a final answer. The future of U.S. trade policy will be shaped by political choices, not just court decisions. The board is reset. The next moves belong to the people and their leaders. The world is watching as America writes its next chapter.